Welcome back to Al Jazeera America. I'm Morgan Radford, and these are our top stories at this hour. An end to the government stalemate is gaining momentum. President Obama and congressional Republicans met face-to-face on Friday, and Republicans left the White House optimistic that a deadlock will end sooner rather than later. Democrats still contend that Republicans must end the shutdown before any deal can be reached. Secretary of State battle is heating up in Congress over the debt ceiling, but this time it's just one side of the aisle. House and Senate Republicans are competing against each other now for the best deal on the debt ceiling and on the government shutdown. Joining us now from Pittsburgh to discuss the GOP rivalry is Lenny McAllister, Republican political strategist. Mr. McAllister, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Morgan.
Now, we understand that the House Republicans seem to want a 6-week extension, while the Senate Republicans seem to want a longer debt ceiling deal. Why the divide?
I think that both want the same exact thing, but they're taking different approaches to get to the same goal, which is basically this. We need to make sure that whatever the deal that comes out of this, we have to make sure that that deal provides the economic stability to start creating jobs. The whole pushback on Obamacare in the first place was the fact that this was going to be job-killing legislation. As we come out of these negotiations, we need to create the foundation necessary so that jobs start coming back into America and that small businesses feel comfortable enough to start hiring people once again as we get through the last half of 2013 and start going throughout 2014. That'll help all these people when they try to run for re-election from a political standpoint, and obviously from an economic standpoint. It finally pulls the American people out of the economic recession that Wall Street has been out of for several years now.
Okay, but we also understand that Senator Lindsey Graham said he expects some type of legislation to come out this weekend, and that if the deal came out of the House, it would be, quote, better for everybody. So whose plan do you think will win?
I think what will probably end up happening is that there will be enough influence coming from the Senate Republicans that will modify the House Republicans' plan somewhat so that once it comes out of the House, it's an easier path to pass through the Senate. I think that's what Senator Graham is looking for, something that we know will get through the House so that by the time it crosses over to the Senate, we're not going through this back and forth once again of conciliation to a point where we're right back at square one and let this process go a lot longer than it needs to. I do believe that we can get through this by the end of this weekend, perhaps by Monday at the very latest.
Okay, now you mentioned it being an easy path, but the truth is for a lot of Americans, this is seen as anything but easy. I mean, a new NBC poll found that most Americans believe the Republicans are to blame for the government shutdown. 70% say Republicans are putting their own political agenda ahead of the needs of the country. So what can the party do now to repair that perception?
I think what the party needs to do is, as we're coming out of these negotiations, we have to make sure that we have a budget going through 2014, and we have to have the economic foundation necessary to create jobs. Everybody's been talking about everything from illegal immigration to any type of fights over Obamacare. But the number one thing that we were supposed to focus on, starting with President Obama's election in 2008, all the way through several elections henceforth, has been creating jobs in America. We have thousands of people jumping out of the workforce. And if Republicans are going to get their political footing once again, we have to make sure that as we come out of these negotiations this weekend, as we put something into place next week, it is something that's going to encourage people to create jobs once again in America, particularly in the small business sector.
Okay, but speaking of political footing, at the Values Voter Summit just yesterday, Ted Cruz urged Boehner not to cave. But really, how does Boehner get out of this political gridlock unscathed? I mean, he's getting pushed from the right, from the president, from the Senate. Is there any way Boehner comes out a winner?
I think the way that he comes out a winner, again, he's going to have some type of compromise where he has some tangible wins. And this is something that the Republicans, particularly in the House, we haven't done a good job of over the last several years. We have to recognize what a political win is. When do we get enough concessions from this president where we walk away and say, we can build upon this in 3 months, we can build upon this in 6 months? Speaker Boehner is going to have to take the lead on this and ignore some of the voices, particularly coming from the other chamber, and make sure that as we walk away from these negotiations, we have enough wins to build upon, even when it comes to some of the modifications that may come with Obamacare. We have to understand that we're not going to be able to change this law completely overnight. It's going to be something that will come through elections. It will be something that will come as this is rolling out and as the glitches continue. We as Republicans have to be in position to provide good legislative proposals so that we can fix these glitches so that Americans get health care reform and economic recovery, not just political infighting.
Thanks very much, Lenny McAllister, Republican political strategist. And